Hey Techno Studs, in this video, let's do some configuration of EtherChannels. All right, I'm on switch 1. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the configurations to configure EtherChannels. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to just show you two of the interfaces I'm going to configure. And so I'm going to show run interface FA104, which is one of them. And as you can see, there's no configuration on this port at this point in time. And same thing with 5. There's no configurations on here. So let's get in here and let's start configuring it. I'm going to get into the global configuration mode, and then we will configure both of these ports. I can do one at a time, and they don't need to be next to each other, but it's just easier for me to do this as a range. So interface range FA104 to 5. We'll configure them both. And I'm going to do a channel group and then a channel group ID. So I'm just going to call this one, channel group 1. So I just need to have an ID for this channel group. And then I'm going to type in mode, and let's do a question mark. So the different modes I can do on this is I can just turn it on. So that's just the straight ether channel. I can create an ether channel with this, or I can automatically create these with the other side by turning it on to using LACP, either passive or active. Active, it actively tries to create an ether channel group, versus passive, it will if the other side wants to. Or PAGP with the desirable or auto. So I have a few choices here. For most of my networks, I've just turned them on and just not have this auto negotiate anything, just create it. So I'm going to type in on, I'll hit enter, and it says creating a port channel interface, port channel 1. So one thing that I always found a little interesting is that I call this a channel group 1, and then it creates a port channel 1. So just realize there's a difference there. The channel group is the command that you enter on the individual interfaces, but the port channel is the interface then that it creates. So let's just take a look at what we have. We'll do a do show run interface FA104. Let's take a look at 104, and we can see that there's only one command that's on here at this point in time. So I'm going to exit out of the interfaces. I'm done configuring it there. I could go into that interface and configure 04 now and configure 05, but the problem with that is then those configurations can be off. So best practices in this case right here is to then get into that port channel and configure the port channel. So I'm going to get into the interface port channel, and it's port channel 1. So I'm inside that interface. And then I would configure this port channel the way I want to configure it. I have the commands here. I just, it doesn't matter how you're going to configure this, whether it's going to be access or trunk or however you're going to want to configure it. For this particular one, I want to configure it as a trunk line. And so I've got my commands. I'm going to paste those into here. And now the port channel I can do is show interface, or excuse me, I'll do it. Do show run interface port channel 1. So I'm going to take a look at the running config of this port channel 1, and it enters the commands I just copied and pasted in there are in there, which makes sense. That completely makes sense. But the other thing I want to show you is interface FA104. And notice here that it actually enters the information on this as well, with the exception of the description, but the rest of it is entered on here. These 3 commands are entered onto this interface. So now it's acting as a channel group. as an ether channel. Okay, so what are a few other commands when I'm going to take a look at things? Of course, show run is one of those that always is great to see what is happening on my switch. And I will show you that the port channel shows right at the top, right before the rest of the physical interfaces are on here. So we see that port channel right there. So that's interesting, and then we can scroll down. We see 04 and 05 with the configurations that we already had established on there, or that we just established. I can do a show interfaces port channel. We'll take a look at port channel 1. And just like I can do a show interfaces on my other interfaces and see some stats and stuff involved with that, I can see that with this one as well. I can do a show ether channel summary and see a summary of what, this port channel that's on here. And then I can also do a show ether channel port channel and see some information on there as well. So there's a few show commands I can use to do some troubleshooting and see what's going on with this, and then and take a look at what's going on my interfaces. So there you have it. So fairly simple, really, to set this up. All there was really a command to set up ether channels on the 2 ports, and that's the channel group command. And then I go into that interface that it creates, that port channel that it creates, and configure the port channel, and then it's set up. It's as simple as that. So they're pretty cool. I like setting these up. I like to set up multiple links. I've had switches that have had 4 or 8 connections between the switches, and then you can get more bandwidth out of this. So I think it's a great thing to do on your network.